Hi, this is Majo John Madden. In Mexico, where I live these days, they call me Juanito. But right now I'm sitting in Asheville, North Carolina, where I've lived a lot in my adult years. And I'm sitting in Mission Hospital, where I'm being treated for a variety of pretty serious medical issues. And it's the July 4th of 2025, our nation's birthday. And my wonderful nurse, CNA Manuela from Ecuador, and I have been talking a lot about Mexico and Ecuador and the US. And she pointed out to me that when my lunch tray came out, it's all got the old glory theme here. So it brought me back to really important July 4th for me, not 1776, I'm not quite that old, 1976, I am that old. I was like 29 years old in the Bicentennial year. And I was living with my wife in Nova Scotia, Canada, where we had moved not in order to flee America, but for interesting jobs for both of us. And she had always dreamed of living in Canada, in Nova Scotia specifically. But I was so genuinely heartsick about the Vietnam War, which I think now everybody understands was a fiasco based on global power games and lots of lying by the U.S. government. And racism in the U.S. sickened both of us. We were protesters for race and for... I had been outside the Democratic Convention in 1968, where the Chicago cops engaged in a police riot against the Vietnamese demonstrators. So I was glad to go. I was sick about my country.
Are you still working?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. That's Manuela over there. Sick. And in Nova Scotia, Canada, where we were living, I got involved in a meditation group following a teacher named Sri Chinmoy from India, who was the real McCoy, a very genuinely spiritual man who really believed in the United States and in the great promise of the United States, and had moved to the U.S. to teach here and would do weekly meditations at the United Nations. The Halifax, Nova Scotia Center was organizing a July 4th anniversary party for the U.S. And Jim from the center called me and said, "John, you're our one American in the center. We'd like you to do some words about America." And I said, "Jim, I'm not much loving my country right now, and I don't feel like celebrating this day." And Jim laid a rap on me about the spiritual essence of the U.S. and why I needed to love my home country. And it left me dizzy. I didn't know what to think or say. I went out and walked along the ocean. We lived right on the Bay of Fundy. And cried and cried and cried. And forgave my parent. Flawed parent that it is. And came back, and when we moved back to the U.S. a couple years later, I threw myself in again to activism and to trying to make this country live out its destiny. So here we are 49 years after that. I'm ashamed of my country. I am, especially after 2 years of living in Mexico, where I've seen how much stronger the democracy is there. They elected a very strong woman, and a woman for the people, not a flim-flam artist who pretends to be for the people, by an 80% mandate. 80%. Mexico, although it's thought to be so dangerous, it's the cartel routes on the west of Mexico. I felt safer in my 2 years in Mexico than anywhere in the U.S. because guns are almost nowhere. People don't have guns. It is not a violent society. There are not school shootings. There are not shootings in discos and malls. No, it doesn't happen. And somehow 50% of Americans got flim-flammed into voting for such a vile monster of a man. Liar, cheat, rapist. That could have happened. What's wrong with America? And I've got lots of ideas. Comes down a lot of it to commercialism, consumerism, the great religion of America. Comes down a lot. I'm a psychologist, clinical psychologist and psychotherapist, not facing our demons, that we have not been honest with ourselves about genocide of Native Americans, about the rape of the environment, about the internment of Japanese, about the routine expulsion of Latin Americans from the U.S. violently, lynchings of Latin Americans in Texas, about racism. We're trying to claim that it never was there. And what you don't face up to and heal from, you continue to repeat. And boy, are we repeating it now. Our treatment of Latin Americans, the terror that lives in the hearts of so many honest, tax-paying people that this country needs. And I've gotten to see how wonderful people what Mexicans are. Overall, sweeter, gentler, kinder, happier, healthier than us gringos, because of lots of things. Intact family structure, more of a social bent than a rugged independent bent. I'm ashamed of my country. I am. So I don't know what's going to talk me back now. Jim Marshall from the Halifax, Nova Scotia Sri Chinmoy group talked me back 49 years ago. I'm up here for medical reasons. 3 months ago, I got flown back to the U.S. for medical reasons. Really just want to go back. I'm so much more happy in Mexico. Sweet society, maligned and misportrayed as it is. I think we've always wanted so much to believe in American exceptionalism, believe in the shining city on the hill, that we don't face up to our demons, and we sure have not now. So I welcome your thoughts. A lot of wonderful people in this country, but how are we as stupid as we seem to be, and as we seem to the rest of the world to be? We're treating our neighbors, Canada and Mexico, wonderful neighbors, we're treating them so shabbily, terrible. Doing nothing about guns, nothing about the environment. I'm ashamed of America. I'm sorry to have to say that, but that's my truth today.